Welcome. My name is Charlie Carreras. I'm the Vice President of the Mahwah Museum, and I'm in charge of the lectures and programs at the museum. We have another exciting program. We've had two of these programs on the history of the college from a student perspective and a faculty perspective. So we're doing this one this evening, Zoom, of course, we have to. And that way, people from outside of the metropolitan area can be on it. So we're excited about that. Before we get started and I introduce the panel, I want to tell you a little bit about the Mahwah Museum. And
Back on my email now.
I hope you can see this. Can you see this? Welcome to the Mahwah Museum. Everybody see this?
For 1 second, Charlie.
Yeah.
Here.
Very nice.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So the Mahwah Museum is in the middle of Mahwah, and we are a town museum. And our mission is to preserve the local history of Mahwah. And of course, Ramapo College is part of that history. We have rotating exhibits right now. We just opened a very interesting exhibit on the women's fight for the right to vote. Of course, of interest to the group tonight, the college comes to Mahwah, Ramapo College 65 to 75. We have a lot of photos, memorabilia, and things from the sports teams and so forth, and comments about the early years from some of you who are on tonight on exhibit. I recommend that to you. Those of you who grew up in the metropolitan area might remember Palisades Amusement Park. This is a very popular exhibit. A friend of the museum in northern New Jersey loaned us his exhibit that he has made, put together, done a lot of research, and I recommend that one to you as well. And the Levo Gallery, Levo was a photographer who traveled around Mahwah in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, taking a lot of photos. And when she moved out of Mahwah, she gave us her collection. Permanent exhibit, the Donna Cooper Railroad, a model railroad, about 8, 9 different trains can run at the same time, a very large collection, interesting setup. Les Paul in Mahwah. Les Paul lived in Mahwah for 60 years. We have the most important artifacts from his estate on loan to us from the Les Paul Foundation. And in the summertime, the old station of Mahwah and a caboose are open on Sundays. Upcoming lectures, a history of Ridgewood from 1894 to 1905 on November the 2nd. December the 2nd, all things Les Paul, the early years, commentary by his son, Jean Paul. In January, starting your family tree, a webinar by our archivist and president of the museum, Kathy Hajo. And in February, history of the Palisades Amusement Park, February the 20th. Details about all of these and registering are already on our website. Of particular interest to this group,
Phone number?
Dr. Eddie Saif, who's a participant tonight, and Dr. Cliff Peterson, who's hiding behind one of the cameras, are going to be on a panel with Nancy Mackin. And that'll be on a Saturday, November 14th from 11 to 12:30. Similar to the program tonight, perspectives of the first years of Ramapo College. We have a large archive, and we have groups coming in to see our exhibits, to see archives, people doing research in the archives and so forth. We have a store. We have a history of Mahwah on sale, Palisades Park, and other books. 4 different copies, 4 different titles of commentary on the Ramapo Indians. We invite you to join the museum. We need new members. As with all museums around the country, we've had a setback because we haven't been able to open. We've lost some memberships. We hope to get them back. We're looking for new members. We're looking for new volunteers, and we're looking for new donations. So keep that in mind, please. And
Who's Mark?
we're open on Saturdays from 1 to 4.
Professor Ramapo.
Again, the exhibit on the history of Ramapo, I think, is a great
Mahwah Museum
exhibit.
screen, view options.
Okay, now, if I can get back to my Zoom screen.
There you are.
Look here. Oh, it's enough, maximum.
Ken,
Yep.
I lost the screen.
We can see you.
Well, we can see
Oh.
you.
Okay, so we're gonna begin. We're gonna begin with Carol Ryan. She was a student in the early 70s, and she's gonna tell you about her time at the college and what she did and what her major was and so forth. Carol, you are on.
Okay. I want to first thank Charlie for arranging this and for all he does for the Mahwah Museum. If anyone hasn't had a chance to go to the exhibit about Ramapo College, it's extremely well done. And my tennis jacket is on a model there. And I keep saying, when am I getting my jacket back? And I found out tonight, probably not for another year, because this exhibit's going to continue. Well, I can give it up, but it's a jacket I really treasure. And I wanted to thank all my teachers at Ramapo, especially a few. Howard Radist. He died a few years ago, 2011, I think. I went to his memorial. He was the first person I met at Ramapo. And it was in a building on Route 17. I had my 3 kids with me, and he was saying, what major do you want? And my kids were in, I guess, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades, and they were kind of getting jumpy. So he said, well, I said, what are my choices? And he said, he's the head of American Studies. So I said, that sounded good. So that's how I made the decision. If it had been international or intercultural, I might have met a certain man, but I'll talk about that a little bit. But that was, so I started in September 22nd, 1971, which was the first day of classes. But before that, it was Marilyn Murray Baysdorfer Randolph, who was a friend of mine. She went to grammar school with me, and we were friends, and we were both had 3 little kids. And she said, why don't you go to that new college up in Mahwah? And I said, no, I'm at Bergen Community. I've got my plan, and so I'm going to continue there. And she said, well, you could transfer your credits. Like, bingo. I thought, well, maybe that's a good idea. So I took the kids. We went up to see the construction site that summer, and I thought, yeah, maybe this is a good idea. So the day I started, I walked in. I remember so clearly. I walked into the building, there was no door. It was the B wing. And I could walk right through the hallway to the other side, which wasn't very far. And there was no door there either. There was no ceilings on some of the classrooms. They were building the college around us, and it was extremely exciting. So Howard Radis was my tutor, and some of you know the tutorial system that started with Potter. Potter had gone to Oxford, I understand, and he had learned the tutorial system. And when I tell people he was my tutor, I think they think I didn't understand English or something. I had to take special classes. But anyway, I would explain that. And I was just the happiest person in the world to go. I was very nervous. I really didn't know much about college. Before I went to Bergen Community College, I was thinking last night, I didn't even know the word matriculate. I even said it right. And it was a big deal to go to school. I was a returning woman. That's what they called us. And that was very exciting, but it was difficult too, because I was juggling the kids, Donna, Scott, and Terry, going to school and all their sports and all that. It was cooking the meals and then going to school and doing the homework and the papers and all that. But I enjoyed it so much that so many of my friends, and two of them are on the screen now, maybe there are more I haven't seen, but Betty Ryan decided she'd go, there she is, and Pat Wellington. And in fact, Pat Wellington took a class with the man who wound up being my husband, and that's a story to come. But I keep referring to that. Charlie has a little bit to do with that too. But I wanted Nancy Heiner, my good friend since high school, Nancy Roden now, and Betty's sister Carol went to the Saturday school, and occasionally I would go to some of her classes, sit in her classes just because she was so busy, and that was the only chance I'd get to see her. Martha Cannon, and but teachers, I had so many great maybe the one I want to mention first is Anthony Padovano, because that first day I went into that American Lit class and I said in the questionnaire that Charlie sent me that there isn't a month that goes by that I don't think of something he said to me. And that is really true. He was just had a tremendous impact on my life, and everybody who had him, I think, felt that way. I see nodding heads. Steve Arianis and Ed Cody. I did my senior seminar with them. I did a paper on Watergate, Nixon. That was kind of fun. And Ben Mazer. Ben Mazer was a freeholder, and my father happened to know him. So I took his class. Now I lived in Wyckoff, and a friend of mine, Jimmy Sheehan, as a matter of fact, some people will know that name, asked me if I wanted to run for the county committee seat in Wyckoff. And I was in Ben's class for suburban politics. And I thought, well, I might learn something about suburban politics actually running and trying to get elected. So I did, and I did win. And so I did learn a lot about politics. It was very interesting. Some things I wasn't so thrilled about learning, but it was a lesson. And it wound up that I worked for Andy McGuire. Pat Wellington, for instance, helped the re-election campaign we had in '78. And many of our family, I was in charge of the phone bank then. That was after Ramapo in the later '70s. But who else did I want to? Carol Duncan, art history was one of the classes. We went to the Metropolitan Museum this Saturday, and I think of Carol because she knew how to teach an art course. It was so great that my friend Nancy Heiner, when I raved about it, she wound up taking Carol's and then actually got her master's at Columbia in art history. So it's exciting that way that we learn from each other. The most important thing I did, I think, at Ramapo was I organized a PIRG, a public interest research group. And I had seen Ralph Nader on Dick Cavett's show. It was '74. And by this time I was tired of just doing papers. So I thought, well, maybe I could start a PIRG. And I went down to Rutgers and talked to people who had started one, how you did it. And I found out you had to petition the students to get a plurality of students that would agree to a very small amount to be added to their tuition. And we did that. We sat in the student lounge and we were able to get enough people to agree to it. It was a small amount, as I say, but it gave stabilization so that the organization would go on. Students come and go, they leave, and hopefully the organization would continue. And a man named Bill Constantine, I was going back into my notes, I had forgotten his name, but he reached out to me about the Tox Island Dam, which was, they were going to dam the Delaware River. And he was part of a coalition to try to stop that. The Army Corps of Engineers were the ones who were going to build this 160-foot dam on this beautiful free-flowing river. Long story, I organized, and my group, we got the Dick Graham and Ramapo's environmental club to help support us. It was a good coalition of people, historians, hunters, and it turned out in President Carter signed and made it a part of the Wild and Scenic Rivers. So all the coalition, it wound up becoming, and that was in '78. He signed the Tox Island, the Delaware River was part of that scenic rivers system. And so that was it was great because I felt so great about it because it was a long lasting, it's still a part of the Wild and Scenic Rivers coalition. So we also went to the student lounge and we organized a letter writing campaign to Brendan Byrne to muster support. And we got over 40 students. We gave them the envelopes and the paper and the stamps, which were 10 cents. And we got over 40 students signing them. Now, being a mother of 3 kids and married to Dawn, I didn't have as much of a social life. So I thought, and I like to play tennis. So they started a tennis team and I joined. And because I was a mother of 3 kids and much older, they called me the old lady. And I played, but actually Norma, who played was one of the teammates, my teammates, she and I battled out for first singles all through the time. And I don't remember, and Dean, I would love to know if there's any kind of information. I went through a website that I found today, and there's some articles that were in the Horizon, and I'm wondering if I can get them. They were just headlines, but that's something I'd like to see because I don't remember.
There is a website.
Yeah.
With the first 2 years of the newspaper. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I saw, actually it goes all the way up to 75 and beyond, I think 75,
Yeah.
but it's very limited. It just says who wrote, like Dean Shapiro wrote a ROCK on the rocks on, what was it, November 13th, 1972. But some of them just say tennis or women's sports.
I think the actual papers are in the archive at the Ramapo Library.
That's what I really want. I love to do research.
I've got some here. I've
yeah.
got some bound editions.
You do? Okay, well, that's a project. Thank you. That'll be great. But the tennis team was really great. Jean Oliver was our coach. She was actually she was a coach at Ramsey High School. And this was her first year coaching. And it was fun. I think we were about 50-50 in the in our win-loss. But I know it was a great experience for me. But I guess the most lasting, important impact Ramapo had on me was almost 50 years after I graduated. Well, 45 years. It was the 50th anniversary. And Charlie Carreras sent hundreds of questionnaires out to the first class.
1,000.
How
1,000.
many?
1,000.
1,000. Oh, okay. Well, I was one that I came this close to deleting it. Because my daughter and I had just gotten back from a trip to Southeast Asia. And it was April 2019, and I almost deleted it. But I didn't. I filled it out, and I guess there were a couple of good paragraphs in there because Charlie, and I had a question, and Charlie sent it to Cliff Peterson. Well, Cliff liked my answers enough that he called me and he asked me if I wanted to go for lunch with Susan Hangen, Dean Susan Hangen, who was a part of the 50th anniversary and tried to get students who had been to Ramapo to talk to new students. So the three of us went to the Mason Jar. Some of you must know the Mason Jar. And
Used to be Brown's
was-
truck stop.
yeah, it's been the Mason Jar for a long time. Well, anyway, so Cliff and Susan and I had lunch, and Cliff afterwards said he drove us there and back, and he said, would you like to go for a little walk around the campus? It was June 11th, 2019. And I said, sure, that would be nice. And we took this little walk around and we saw Ed Safe. He introduced me to Ed Safe and I said, hello. And then we went to the Padovano Pavilion and we sat there and we talked for hours. Well, at the end of it, he said, I'm a shy guy. He said, would you like to go to a movie sometime? And that was the beginning because in May 2020, May 30th, 2020, Cliff and I were married on a Zoom wedding. So some of you were at that wedding. I know Pat and Betty and Charlie. And of course, Charlie gets the Cupid Award because he's the one who sent the questionnaire. We gave him a certificate of Cupid. What was it? Cupid status or something.
Number one Cupid.
Number one Cupid. And Cliff is here and he's the love of my life. He really is. And we're happily married.
Great story. Great people. Thank you, Carol.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And he's on the program next month, so he can tell his version of that.
Can I interject something in here? I want to just tell you about a book that I was given, and it is called Innovations and Realities. It's a history of Ramapo College of New Jersey, the first quarter century, 1971 to 1976. It's
Wow.
by Henry Bischoff.
Oh.
And I'm sure the museum probably has copies of this or maybe even sells copies of that.
Well, we have one copy that can be perused. I think it's out of print, but I don't know if there's any more around. Thank you for that comment. And we're going to go to our other two panelists now, and then we're going to open it up to questions and comments and suggestions. So Dean Shapiro, you're up.
Come on, eh? Okay, coming to you live from my bedroom / office in the great city of New Orleans, where most of you have probably been. I'm a member of the class of 1974, where I graduated with a degree, a BA in history. And first of all, I want to thank Dr. Carreras and the others who are making this podcast possible, giving those of us early graduates the opportunity to speak about our experiences from the first years of the college's existence. It's been 45 years since I graduated, and a lot of water has flowed under the bridge since then. And sometimes I feel like those of us who were in the earliest graduating classes have been largely overlooked because of, for whatever reasons or over the years, these things happen. So whenever I get a copy of the magazine, the alumni magazine, and I see very little about the those of us old timers from the 70s. So hopefully this is our opportunity to talk up those years and have it preserved for posterity. And I hope I can make something of a contribution here to the existing body of knowledge of our beloved alma mater. How's that for a nice plug? Before I get into my presentation, I want to put in a plug for some of my history professors that I had at Ramapo and express my gratitude for the experience of learning that I took away from this. Of course, Professor Carreras and Professor Peterson are in that number, along with Dr. Ira Spar for History of the Ancient Middle East, Luke Quanten for Eastern Civilization, and my advisor, Dominic Pelizzato, for Medieval History. What they imparted to me has stayed with me over the years and enabled me to better do my job in the careers that followed in journalism and public relations. Here comes the narrative, so just bear with me. My decision to enroll at Ramapo came about a year and a half after graduating from Rockland Community College in 1971, during which time I considered a good number of other colleges. During my 2 years at RCC, I made the Dean's List 3 out of 4 semesters, and I was the editor-in-chief of their newspaper for my last 2 semesters. I could very likely have been accepted at Columbia University with the grades that I had and the fact that my dad was an alumni there. And with my student newspaper background, I probably would have gone in, write for the Columbia Daily Spectator and might even be today working for the New York Times. But that's not a choice that I made. I wanted to go to a smaller college, one that was just starting out and would give me a chance to make something of an impact. And Ramapo, being into its only second year, gave me that opportunity. Plus, I was attracted to its innovative experimental philosophy, centered around the tutorial concept that then President George Potter brought over from his native England. So I enrolled in Ramapo for the 1972 fall semester. With my student newspaper background from RCC, it was only logical that I should sign up to write for the fledgling Ramapo newspaper, which at the time was called New Horizons and later shortened to Horizons. At the time, the paper was published roughly every 2 weeks, and for some reason, which I can't now recall, it took me 3 issues to get something published, but when I did, it took up the entire front page. And from that point on, I was getting stories published regularly, sometimes 2 or more per issue. Near the end of the semester, with the editor at that time stepping down, I was chosen to be the new editor-in-chief for the spring 1973 semester, and again for the fall of that year. The task that lay ahead of me was trying to better organize the newspaper into the format that resembled as closely as possible that of a commercial publication, but one which best reflected the needs and interests of the students on campus. My first editorial was an introduction to myself and the goals which I hope to accomplish as editor, most of which, I'm proud to say, came to pass. There was a lot of work to be done to not only establish the newspaper's credibility, but to make it into a workshop for those who might have been planning to pursue a career in journalism. Along those lines, I appointed those that I felt to be best people to head up the various departments, which include news, features, entertainment, opinion, sports, photography, advertising, and bookkeeping. I was very blessed to have, for the most part, a talented team and staff, most of whom went on to lucrative and rewarding professional careers. One of our music writers, Joe Dara, later became the chief publicist for Paul McCartney. My right-hand assistant, arts and entertainment editor, John Grabowski, went on to work for NBC. Daniel P. Quinn, who wrote about opera and stage, and I hope is listening to this, became a published author and a self-employed performing arts promoter, and he's one of my Facebook friends. Bob Bogert, our cartoonist, went on to become the graphic artist for 2 of New Jersey's largest circulating newspapers, The Record and the Newark Star-Ledger. I'm proud of all of them and proud to have had a part, whatever small part I might have played in their lives and their careers. In mid-March of 1973, Horizons faced up to its most challenging test to that date. Controversy erupted when Michael Holden, a popular assistant professor in the Division of Teacher Education, was initially denied reappointment, and a student strike was called to protest how the situation was handled, especially by the administration and the Board of Trustees. Am I coming in okay?
Yes, good.
Okay. As the controversy swirled, Professor Holden turned over to the newspaper a series of previously classified documents which took up 3.5 pages in the newspaper, spelling out in all the pertinent details and the exact words in which they were originally conveyed. The strike centered around efforts by student representatives to achieve parity in the governing of the college and the making of its policies, and it was our front page story. From this experience, especially our editorial decision to publish the documents from Professor Holden's file, the newspaper gained a large amount of credibility. As editor, I had to make the decision on where we stood on the issues, and it had to be largely a position of neutrality, assessing the issues from both sides and calling for compromise. Within a week or two, the controversy settled down, and if I'm recalling correctly, Professor Holden was reappointed. A major objective of mine was achieved in the fall of 1973 when Horizons began publishing weekly, thanks to an increase in our budget. At the end of that semester, being limited by our bylaws to 2 terms, I turned over the reins to Karen Saletti, who continued the work we began very capably. The next 2 editors after her were also people who held editorial positions during my tenure, for which I was very proud. Toward the end of my senior year, Horizons received a first-place award from the prestigious Columbia Scholastic Press Association, and I was personally awarded Editor of the Year award from the New Jersey Collegiate Press Association. Also, at the end of my senior year, I was proud to have been honored with the first Outstanding Student Award for my class by the newly formed Ramapo Alumni Association. I was equally proud to be chosen as student speaker for the class of 1974, speaking from the same podium as our honored guest, Ralph Nader. Among my, not all just newspapers, that I remember. Among my other memories of Ramapo are hosting an oldies show on WRPR as the Dean of Rock and Roll, a nickname given to me by Ed Lewis, who trained me on the DJ equipment. I had a lot of fun DJing for dorm parties, especially in the apartment of Mary Beth Thompson. God bless her memory. Mary Beth was a legendary queen of the dorm parties, for which sometimes got so raucous the Mahwah police had to be called in. And for Mike O'Brien, who I hope is still out there, I remember well your show with Joe Daly, Daly every day, and O'Brien every once in a while. You guys used to like clowning on the air and playing novelty songs, and that was always a fun time. Some interesting guest speakers that we had on campus included Anthony Burgess, author of A Clockwork Orange, and Major League Baseball player, pitcher turned author, the recently deceased Jim Bouton. After his talk, he told some off-color, off-the-record revelations about his former Yankee teammates that weren't in the book, and this was at a reception in Mary Beth's apartment, where else? Anyway, and here comes the funny part. And of course, there was a coup de grace on the final night of my final day of classes in 1974, the final day of my college career, during a variety hosted by Joe Daly and Mike O'Brien in the campus pub. Mike, you'll probably remember this well. I streaked in front of a packed house, surprising everyone who knew me. I'll spare the rest of the details, except to say that all the while, Joe Salmon was following me, snapping pictures. And someday, somewhere, these pictures are liable to turn up and be used to blackmail me.
I have them, Dean.
I was gonna say, did you ever find them? And you did, huh?
I'm sure they're in my pile of negatives. Yeah.
Well, just don't blackmail me with them. That was fun, but Anyway, all in all, my 2 years at Ramapo College were among the most rewarding and fun years of my life. I did a lot, I learned a lot, and I hope I made some sort of a lasting impact, even after all the years that have passed. And I want to conclude, though, with an anecdote of more recent vintage. In October of 2013, I was covering the performing arts for the New Orleans Advocate, a daily newspaper here. I was previewing a stage play that was being performed here called Tony and Tina's Wedding. Starring in the title roles were a young married couple, Sam Masato and Gina Musmesi Masato. When I read their bios in preparation for interviewing them, I saw that they were both graduates of Ramapo College, class of 2004. It struck me immediately. This was exactly 30 years after my own graduation, and it dawned on me that a second generation had graduated from the college that was in its infancy when I graduated. 2 generations already, and in another 3 to 5 years, a third generation will be graduating. What a great contribution to the Ramapo legacy. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Dean. That was great. So,
It was a canned speech, but it was the best I could do.
that was
was great.
terrific.
I'm
That's
a
terrific.
writer. I had to have it all down in front of me.
That's great. So Vincent, you probably need no introduction to
Let me
this
tell you,
group.
that's a tough act to follow, Dean.
That's right.
Sorry, Vince. I
But
didn't
But I'm
lose
sure
that
you'll
stage,
do
anybody.
it.
It's just great seeing everybody. I haven't seen Dean since 1975 or 4. I think one of the last years he came back for an event on campus, and that was it. I mean, so it's incredible.
Probably
See
right.
everybody. And I see some names that I haven't seen in quite some time as well. I just want to say it's terrific, and it's great to see everybody, particularly some professors that I've had that have joined this meeting. It's great to see Flavia. Flavia I haven't seen in quite some time. We worked together when I was a student. She was working down the Great Falls Historic District, and they were just excavating the Thomas Rogers building at the time. And she got me on board, her and Mary Ellen Kramer, the former wife of former Mayor Patterson, Pat Kramer. And those were great days. I got involved in that. And I'm still actually peripherally involved in that in the Historic District, the Great Falls District. Anyway, what I want to do is I'm just going to read something formally. It's sort of an introduction. It's actually, I'm taking it from about a couple of years ago. They asked us to submit for the Alumni Association success stories. So I'm going to just read what I wrote for that, and then I'm going to ad-lib it a little bit here. Although, let me know if you can hear me okay, because I'm turning my head a little bit to read this. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this a little bit. Hi, Nancy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Although the college was new, Ramapo was new, when I started, the experience I had was priceless. I was taught and mentored by some of the most talented, educated faculty in the country. My experiencing was life enriching and rewarding, in fact, almost life changing. My memories of my days on campus will remain with me forever. And Ramapo has become one of the top colleges in the country. As an educator, I am always recommending my students to enroll at Ramapo. I graduated in 1975 with a degree in sociology and then a minor in anthropology. I am currently a social studies teacher for Patterson Public Schools. I'm a professional photographer whose work has been featured in major magazines and displayed in galleries and museums throughout the area. My photograph of the Great Falls has been designated the official image of the Great Falls National Park. Let's see here. I'm trying to eliminate the first person. I was also involved in National History Day. I'm a mentor for National History Day, and I encourage my students to participate in the National History Day contest. By having my history students get involved, some of them have gone on to the national contest down in Washington, D.C. So anyway, I'm done reading that. That's kind of enough of a thing. I'm still living. When I was a student, I was in Patterson, and I'm still living in Patterson, actually. And the way the whole thing happened, the way I wound up at Ramapo College, I decided to work a year after high school, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to school, to college, or trade school, or what to do. And finally, I got a phone call from my guidance counselor, former guidance counselor. And he said, Vince, he says, there's a new school that's opening up in Mahwah. He says, you ought to check it out. And I said, really, where? He says, Mahwah. And I said, Mahwah, I wonder where that is. Okay, so I mentioned to my dad, Mahwah. He says, don't you remember when you and your sister were little kids? I used to throw, on a hot summer night, I used to throw you back in a car. We used to drive up Route 202 in the country and stop at Bill Brown's ice cream parlor on 202 and get ice cream. And I said, oh, okay, that sounds nice. So that I applied and I was accepted. And I believe it was that May that I said to my dad, can we take a drive up there and see where the school is? I would just like to see it. So we drove up and everything was fenced off. And if you remember and recall, there are two stanchions that are down by the gymnasium, okay? And they're on 202. Well, those stanchions was the original gate to the Birch's estate. And the road that leads up where the arch is, and that road went all the way down. That was the access road to the grounds, to the estate. And that road at the bottom had the stanchions, and there was a gate there. Well, my dad pulled it in there, and there were two other students there, and they were peering in through the chain link fence. And I got out, and I started looking through the chain link fence. And I said, "Are you going to Ramapo College?" And they said, "Yes, we are." And I said, yeah, so am I. And I said, where's the school? There was like we couldn't see anything. Of course, the buildings were up top, on top of the hill a ways, but from our vantage point, there was nothing there, nothing obvious anyway. So to this day, I always think about that. And I wish that I knew I had gotten their names and found out who those students were. Anyway, so I started at Ramapo, and I remember orientation, which was at Mahwah High School. And we had orientation, and Dick Bond was there, and he was speaking to everybody and giving us the lowdown about the school and everything like that. And mind you, we still haven't seen the school yet. So he had us, after our orientation at Mahwah High, he had everybody in the auditorium go down to Ramapo. And this was our first time on campus, and it was late. The school opened late, if I recall correctly. I think it opened around the 20th or 21st of September.
It was one week late.
Yeah, something like that. So now we're walking around, and I said, well, this is quite interesting, walking through the mud and everything, and the mire. And, and I remember when I started taking classes. I said to a couple of friends that I said, my high school is bigger than this school. And I said, I'm sure the student population of my high school was bigger than this too. I believe there was about a little over 1,100 students when I started. But, there was a certain intimacy about it. And it was just absolutely terrific. And I think those of you who are, from campus and graduates and faculty know what that intimacy was all about. There was an intimacy between student and the relationship with professor. I had classes in my teachers' living rooms because things weren't finished. There were certain classes that were not done, and they would have us over, and we would have the class in their parlor or living room. And we all know, those of us who were there back in the day, if you took a gym class, we were at the Olympia Swim Club on Route 17. And, the admissions office was on Route 17. I remember Vince Nardiello had his office there. So, and I remember being in class and it was a work in progress, and there were bulldozers going by as we were being taught, and stuff. So, we all had very long hair back then. And sometimes we can, the construction workers, the hard hats as they were called, were not all that friendly with us sometimes. But, I had some terrific professors, and again, my experience, and I'm just going to read through this list real quickly. And this is just a few of the professors that I remember and had an impact on me, but there's certainly a lot more. Ira Spar, who is certainly a character, who was a terrific professor. And I remember I took him for an archaeology of a biblical archaeology class, and it was a night class, and we had this fellow and I guess his girlfriend, and they were constantly, always had their arms over each other when they were in class. So about 3 weeks into or 4 weeks into the class, they didn't show up for a class. So he says to everybody, he looks around, he goes, "Where's the lovebirds?" You know, and I just thought that was, oh my, yeah, okay. But you know, Ira Spar, Howard Radis, I loved this. He always used to wear that beret, the beanie. Murray Bookchin, Yole Sills, who was a stickler for footnotes for our term papers. Warden Day. When I first started, I was actually an art major in CA, but the facility was so limited for art and everything, decided to switch my major and go into the School of Intercultural Studies and switch my major. But Warden Day was absolutely terrific. And then I had Marshall Harth, of course, Walter Brown, Azuka Dike, I don't know if you remember him, Paul Elovitz, terrific, AKB Pillai, who can never pronounce my name. It was always calling me Wince. So, for some reason, couldn't call me with the V. It was Wince. So I had a friend from Vietnam, just came back from Vietnam at the time, John Avato, and we were rooming together. And he would rib me to no end. Wince. I said, "John, don't call me Wince." So Roger Johnson, I think it was O. Johnson, the music teacher.
Yes.
Roger O, because then there was Roger N and TAS. Ted Saul, I had Laura Clark. I don't know if you remember her. She goes way back.
Anthropology.
Yes, for anthropology. Her and Sue Ehrman. I had Bill Murnian. I roomed when the gas crisis hit, so I got a room in the seminary. And these people there, Anthony Padavano, Bill Murnian, they all came from Darlington, you know, seminary. Of course, Professor Padavano, and then other professors that I remember, like I mentioned, Flavia and Gordon and Dr. Safe and so on and so forth. Another thing is that, you know, I'm a photographer, and I've been a photographer, and because I'm a photographer is because of Ramapo College. Ramapo, you know, being a kid from Patterson, okay, you have to realize, you know, going up to Ramapo was such an incredible experience. You know, here you are in this gorgeous setting, the mountains and everything like that. And remember, Mahwah back in that day is not like Mahwah today. And of course, the campus was quite small as well, and not built up as it is today in its latter phases. So it was very, very impressive. And I started to look around, and I said, you know, I got to start documenting all this and start taking pictures. So I went in and I bought a used camera, and that's how it started. I just started taking pictures all over the place, and I started stringing for the newspaper, for the college paper, and taking pictures of events, things that were happening when Jane Fonda was on campus. You know, I documented all that. Our speakers, as Dean had mentioned, you know, a lot of our speakers that were on campus, I mentioned that. When the military came on to recruit, and, you know, there was a big fuss about that, and they were escorted off campus by the campus police because they were afraid that there was going to be some, you know, violence and stuff. And I photographed that and documented that, and all types of events and other things that went down on campus. So I have a good 300-400 negatives of, including Dean streaking in the pub. I got our ones over a Halloween party though. And then there are two people that helped me that were they were part of the staff. They were not faculty. But if you remember, I know Gary Biebauer, who worked for the Media Center, a terrific guy, terrific photographer, and the fellow who replaced him, Eric Unjum, who helped me as well. So, and then, you know, my interest in again, I can't just say how wonderful it was. And I made friends at the very beginning of my time at Ramapo. I made friends not only with faculty, but with other students. To this day, I'm still friends with them. Okay. I have some friends who I've seen them get married, have children, and now have grandchildren. It's just absolutely incredible. And I'm still in touch with, like, Dina and I are friends on Facebook. I just got friends with some people that I see here. I'm friends with Lynn and Ricky Rudowitz. I mean,
Oh, my.
I haven't talked to and seen in so many, many years. I mean, it's absolutely terrific. But, you know, I'm still involved with Ramapo, as many of you may know. I'm active with the Alumni Association. I'm up on campus at least a couple times a year. So, you know, I get involved. I go to the events that they have. They have in the summer, you know, they have the alumni reunion and so forth and so on. And I dress up all my photos and set up the table and everything and stuff like that. But I really enjoy it. I love it. And I love staying connected in that way. By the way, I'm one of the founders of the Alumni Association. And I'm the third president of the Ramapo College Alumni Association. So, so anyway, I have, as I mentioned earlier, before a lot of people came on, I have tons of ephemera. I have everything. In fact, right here, I have the first newspaper. Okay, I still have the first newspaper, volume 1, number 1. And here's an article. So it says, "Students Discuss Government" by Jerry Brennan. Hi, Jerry. You're on. Anyway, and I remained on campus, as many of you know, for a few years, working at the college. And at that time, I got a little more involved. Mark Singer, who I believe is on board with us, helped me with the Alumni Association. He let me use his office and, you know, to publish a newsletter and a column in one of the periodicals that the college put out. And so on. So I had great memories. I used to run a lot of the Halloween functions, the Haunted Mansion. In fact, I still see that they have it on campus, and I'm one of the ones that started that you know, that function for the school. Anyway, there's so much more, and we can go on. I know all of us can just go on and on and on. So I'm going to leave it at that. And you know, we're
going to jump in quickly and just say
Yes.
thank you, Vince, and thank you, everyone. I am still an activist, and I have a meeting at 8:30, another Zoom meeting, and I'm going to be before the City Council of Bridgeton, New Jersey, tomorrow. So this was wonderful. This is a short walk down memory lane. Thank you all
Yes.
for doing this.
Flavia,
Thank you,
so
Charles.
good seeing you. Yes.
Great to see you, Flavia.
See you, Flavia.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Flavia. And just if I can interrupt for one moment, Q&A is open, chat is open. If you go at the bottom of your screen, if you want to type in a question. And what I'd like to do is, we got 45 people on this call here. So if we keep it a little bit structured, we'll keep this open, and we'll stay around as long as you want to stay around. So please,
Well, if we're done before you're done, I'll come back, but thank you. It was
Okay,
terrific.
Carol.
Thank you. It was
Bye,
wonderful.
bye, Flavia.
Bye.
Carol and Dean, Vince, do you have any other comments while we're waiting for a chat to come in?
Yeah, I just want to reply. I see something here, but it'd probably be easier for me to reply. I see something from Tom Dunn, and he asked me, you had an orientation at Mahwah High School. Yes, we did. Our orientation was
Yeah, we heard that before.
it was in September
Yes.
of 71. Yeah,
Yeah, because it was at Mahwah High because the
Right.
campus wasn't ready.
that's right. Yeah,
It couldn't be there. And
That's
by the
right.
way, if you have a dog or a cat making noise in the background, we're picking it up on the microphone. So be careful. Okay. Who has, if I can look and see, there's nothing there yet.
yeah, there you go, Dean.
What is that, Dean?
This is the first yearbook.
Yes, yearbook.
No, oh, my.
Does anybody else have copies of this, or?
Yes,
you know?
Yeah, we have them in the museum too.
I have a copy, Dean. And you know what's interesting?
That isn't the first yearbook. I'm sorry.
Right.
The first yearbook was a magazine. It was just a couple of pages. That was probably the first published yearbook.
Okay, well, this is in hardcover. I just wanted to know, I mean, I could eventually donate it, but if you have copies already, that's cool.
While we're waiting for any other comments, I don't know if Jerry Brennan can hear me, but he was involved in some kind of publication or student government or something. Jerry, can you hear me?
Yeah, well, at the end of, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, at the end of the first year, 71, 72, we at the newspaper put out this type of yearbook. I have a copy of it. It was in a newspaper form because we didn't have a yearbook. And we just put a lot of pictures in it, the beginning pictures of the college being built. And at the end, the back cover was a black back cover, and it had a picture of a donkey, and it just read "The End," and so forth. It's a juvenile attempt at some humor at the end of an interesting year. But there were students who tried to get together a yearbook that year. There were students who were interested in a yearbook during that first year, 71, 72, and there were photographers taking pictures, which I think somewhere there are black and whites and there are negatives of a lot of pictures, and I don't know what happened to them, but I do have a copy. And Charlie, you
Yes, we have a copy at the museum.
at the museum, and
Yes.
it's a black copy of a multi-page end of the year newspaper. That was the closest that first year of a publication coming to a yearbook. And if you look at that, there are pictures of the construction and throughout the year of events happening at the college that year.
Jerry?
Is that the publication where Mary Beth Thompson wrote a long essay?
I don't recall. Mary Beth, we had an expression. I was the editor that first year for the newspaper, and you know how the New York Times expression is
All the news that's fit to print.
yeah. Well, we were so desperate for copy that we had all the news that fits, we print. We just welcomed copy. I mean, I believe Vince was contributing, pictures at that point, and
Right.
and I had an opportunity, I think, Dean, to meet you,
Yeah.
and let Vince. I appreciate the plug with the article in that first edition, and I'll just make a couple quick mentions. The first staff of the newspaper, if you look at the staff, there is no editor, there is no feature editors. That's because we decided we would have a truly democratic staff with no hierarchy of editorship. And that quickly, after a couple months, devolved into no paper being published. And the dean of students stepped in and said, "You guys have to choose an editor." And so he made us have a meeting of the staff, which we had in the York room. And the choice came between me and a student who was very well qualified to be an editor, a good guy by the name of Gene Lorette. I don't know if any of you remember
I
Gene.
do.
And after 2 votes, we were tied. And another student walked in after the second vote who was more friendly to me than Gene, and he walked in the room. And when they took the third vote, he was the newly appointed Supreme Court justice, so to speak. And that's how I became the editor.
Well, Jerry, on this first issue here, if you see it, I'll hold it up. It says, it has your article. It says Students Discuss Governments by Jerry Brennan. And then here, while faculty make proposals by Jean Lorette.
Right,
So there's that like the
Right.
two of you right there.
Right.
So
Well,
anyway.
Gene, like I said, he was a very good newspaper person. And so we chose an editor, and then we had if you look at the masthead afterwards, after about November, there is an editorial staff with an editor-in-chief, a feature editor, news editor, and so forth. And that carried forward. And I think the newspaper really took off under Dean's leadership when he was chosen.
Jerry, see, here's the other, this is when it transitioned from the paper to the paper, but it has, I believe, the editorial, because this now is December 3rd, 1971.
Right.
So this is when it, and let me see if I can open it up, and it gives, yes, it gives the, now here's all the editorial stuff. Editor-in-chief, Jerry Brennan, news, and then photography and so on, and layout and so on. So it has all the editorial stuff on the inside now,
Right.
and the December issue.
I have some questions that have come in. If anybody, a question came in from Tom Dunn about, does anybody remember the Nike base?
I
Anybody
remember
have
it
classes
well.
at the Nike base?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where we had our first science labs.
Yeah.
They were obviously barracks, and some of the barrack furniture was still around. And in fact, at least for those of us in TAS, was also the first faculty club, where we had some lockers with some alcoholic beverages.
What about students? Any
Well,
students?
you know,
Yes.
all of the
This
all
is
the
Nelson.
students who needed.
Now,
Yeah,
any
we took
students who are
labs.
on the Zoom, Eddie? Any students on the Zoom?
Yeah, now this is Nelson. We used to go there for bio and chemistry lab.
Who's speaking?
That was Nelson Ramirez.
Okay. Let's see, what else? Let's see, what did Ramapo do to attract students to enroll when they were first established? Well, Nancy, can you deal with that, Nancy? You're muted.
Unmute yourself.
I wasn't involved in admissions. I was the registrar then.
Since I lived in Mahwah, and there were, what George Potter did is he went to a lot of the clubs in northern New Jersey, Rotary Club, Lions Club, places like that, Chamber of Commerce, and there were many articles in the paper that you can still find now. So there was a lot of publicity about the college, the Bergen Record and the Patterson News and other newspapers. That's one thing that they did.
And,
Let's see.
and that first year was oversubscribed by a substantial cohort.
We expected 800 students and 1,200 students showed up.
They accepted the top numbers in the classes in surrounding high schools, and that's how come we ended up with so many students.
Mhm.
Another question is, what do you think Ramapo education, was it different from another more traditional school you might have attended?
Yes.
I mean, Dean mentioned it a little bit. I mean, first of all, we had that unique tutorial experience. I don't believe that there's a another college at that time anyway that had that set up. President Potter brought that over from Oxford, that whole system. So that in itself was quite unique. The small classroom size. I mean, you got to remember, there were classes. I had friends that were going to the colleges in the area, Montclair, William Patterson, who had 60, 70 students in a lecture hall class. So I think my biggest class at almost 4 years at Ramapo College were maybe 20 students, 22, maybe 25 at the most.
I had originally tried to apply to Patterson State, and my friend Marilyn Murray Daysdorfer said she remembered that they lost my papers. So I was kind of glad because I wound up at Ramapo. But there was another reason too. It was so much more structured. And as the mother of 3 kids and, a married woman, older, I needed flexibility, and Ramapo was very flexible. Many of my classes had returning vets and policemen, firemen who worked a night shift and then would come to college during the day. So it was a tremendous variety of students that were there, and that added a lot. The teachers were incredible too. I think many of them, like Cliff, came to Ramapo because it was new and innovative. By the way, there's somebody who's got radio on or something, and they should mute themselves.
Background noise is
There's a
somewhere.
lot of background noise there. Okay, we couldn't hear you, Vince. So. There we go.
I mean,
there we go.
True. I mean,
Tom,
everything
that's good.
everybody's
Thanks.
saying is true. And there was the word was out. I mean, it was a lot of word of mouth. I mean, the word got out. Hey, there's this new school that opened up in Mahwah, and there are professors that are coming over from Columbia, from New York University to teach. There were the Jesuits who were teaching, the Augustinians who are teaching there. I mean, it really, there was quite a scuttlebutt of word. Oh, wow, look at what's going on at Mahwah, and people were just attracted like a magnet to Ramapo.
Well,
Also, I think
Padovano, Anthony Padovano had just left the priesthood. He didn't have a place to stay, and Howard Radist offered him a temporary home. So Tony, now it's Tony, I know him as a person, just a teacher, but he stayed with with Howard and Rita for a while. And so I had professors who had taught environmental studies that lived in New York City and arranged. We had people from the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I had a music teacher from Metropolitan, anthropology class. So it really was special in that regard too. People were attracted to Ramapo that might not have been.
Absolutely.
I think one thing that Dean said, if I can go back to what Dean said, what I saw in the surveys that Carol referred to is when some of your counselors and your teachers saw you, like Dean and Vincent, as unusual students, as talented but looking for something different, perhaps. I heard a lot of students in their survey say that their teachers would refer them to Ramapo because they thought they would thrive there, that it was a new and different place.
Yes, absolutely.
And,
Weigh in on that a little bit?
what did you say, Dean?
Can I weigh in on that a little bit?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no. The first college that I went to after graduating high school was the University of Arizona. Something I don't talk too much about because I only lasted one semester there. It gets into what I think Carol mentioned earlier about the big classes, 60 people, 70 people in a lecture hall with the professor on a TV screen. That was the type of thing that I was trying to get away from. While I was at Arizona, I was in a class for half the semester before it was realized that I was in the wrong class. there was so many people, you were just a number. And I said, you know, after that experience, I'm only going to small colleges from here on. And that was
I,
part of my decision not to go to Columbia, you know, because I would have gotten lost there.
well, I did go to Columbia, Dean, after Ramapo.
Yeah.
And there was a Barron's Guide to Graduate Schools. And I remember reading while I was there that the one line was institutional indifference. And I thought that was very true. I mean, I got a great education, but it was so different from Ramapo. Ramapo was human being to human being. And
Yeah.
Columbia was, I must say, it gave me a great education, but it just wasn't as much fun. Let's put it that way. And fun in learning, not just fun with the people that we met, but it was an exciting learning experience.
And again, the
professors too.
size of the size of the population of the school, by the mere virtue of that size, you just met so many people, you know, and befriended so many people, and a variety of different people from different backgrounds and so forth, so different ways of thinking and stuff. And, you know, I have friends that go to these bigger schools. They don't meet anybody. They go there, they do their thing, they study, and they're gone. Nobody makes that kind of lifelong type of friendship that was so particular to Ramapo College, you know?
I don't think you can truly appreciate Ramapo, and I'm saying this from my own experience, unless you transferred, unless you were a transfer student like myself and my wife. I went to St. Peter's College in Jersey City for 2 years. So I came in to Ramapo as a third-year student. And I was coming from Jesuit education for 6 years because I went to a Jesuit prep school, went to St. Peter's College. And for me, Ramapo was freedom. It was educational freedom. And the professors allowed me to be free. And I was allowed to structure my education with my professors the way I wanted to under his or her guidance. And it was wonderful. And just to give you quick examples, I had a professor at the end of a semester sit down with me and ask me, what grade did I think I should have? And I told him what grade I thought I should have. And he looked at me, he said, no, I think you did better than that. And he gave me the better grade. So I was lucky. He didn't give me the grade that I thought I should have. He gave me, the better grade. I had another professor ask us in a lit class, a modern a novel literature class, to devise a project with a modern novelist, modern day novelist, to devise a project. And I looked up Joseph Heller in a author's book in the library. I found his address, called him. I said, can I come over and interview you for a project? My then girlfriend, who later turned out to be my wife, schlepped over to New York with a tape recorder and interviewed Joseph Heller for my project. And this was the type of freedom that Ramapo gave me that I didn't have in the Jesuit school that gave me a good education, but Ramapo allowed you to breathe educationally that I didn't have. So I understand, you know, when you're coming out of high school, how liberating Ramapo felt, but it felt all that more liberating when you were coming from a different college, a different 4-year institution. And dealing with our professors, and one other thing, that first year in Ramapo, we had parties where everybody came, the professors, the dean of students, and President Potter. We had an end of the year party at my girlfriend's house. She lived with her folks, and the president came to her house. And it was as natural as could be. I don't think the president of St. Peter's College would have come to my house. And it was just like, now granted, Ramapo was smaller then and so forth, but this was the atmosphere that the tutorials fostered. I think that the professors were open to. Their doors were always open. You could call them. You could stop by and see them. The advisors we had for the newspapers worked with us. So to me, Ramapo was educational freedom. And that's what drew me there. And I was lucky. I mean, the guidance counselors in high schools and the guidance counselors in colleges who were telling us to go to Ramapo, those people deserve medals or wherever they are. I hope they have their because they got us to the right place at the right time.
Okay, I have a question here. Somebody has asked about the exhibits that at the Mahwah Museum, the exhibit on the college. I'll just give you a brief sketch, and you can learn more about the current exhibits and the hours we're open and programs coming up and so forth by going to the Mahwah Museum website, the mahwahmuseum.org. But when you walk into the exhibit, the first thing you see is a dorm room from 1971 with Cynthia Brennan's dresses that she loaned to us that are on 4 or 5 mannequins. And if you say, Google play Ramapo music, the music will come up that you might have listened to in 1971. And then we have panels along the wall with pictures around campus, variety of pictures, casual pictures of campus life on the lawn by the big tree on the side of the Birch Mansion. And also, thanks to people like Carol and Nelson, we have a lot on the sports team. Artie Chill is not on here tonight. Artie has a ton of stuff on hockey. So we got soccer, we got tennis, we got hockey, we got baseball, we got football. So it's a reflection of campus life in the first 4 or 5 years. So I recommend it to you. And we're open 1 to 4 on Saturdays. If that's not convenient, you can send me an email and I can meet 2 or 3 of you at a time at the museum. We're following all of the state and national protocols for safety, 10 people in the museum at a time. You have to have a mask, and we have enough space so we can have social distances. We have time for a couple more questions. Anybody that hasn't had a chance yet from the first years?
Can I show something for a second? Just 1 second.
What's that?
Class, Jerry had mentioned the early yearbooks, and Dean had said that he had the 74 yearbook. Interestingly enough, the following class, which was my class, 75, we didn't have a yearbook. We had this year, and some of you are, I could see, are in class 75 that have joined in here, but it was called a reasonable facsimile.
I have it.
This was our yearbook.
We have that in the exhibit too.
And here it has some of the speakers that, for master lecture or whatever, and it was Charles Evers, Jim Bounton, Jane Fonda, Philip Berrigan, Pete Seeger, Toni Morrison, Charles Bulitz, Anthony Burgess. I mean, it was incredible. But yeah, this is our yearbook. You know what I want to do? I had an idea, and I'm going to throw this out to some of my classmates out there. I wanted to try and do a yearbook of the class of 75 and get in touch with whoever graduates are around from 75 and have them send me a photo of themselves now, and have maybe a virtual yearbook or something, the class of 75, because we only have the reasonable facsimile.
It would be
I always
quite
wanted a
creative.
real
creative
yearbook.
of
Good
you.
idea.
That's a
Good,
great
quite
idea.
creative. You're coming up with good ideas.
Such a
Hey,
bad
Vinny.
commencement
Vinny,
speaker.
you became a thinker all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, see if it
Raise your hand if you want to jump in here in the closing minutes.
We had
Anybody?
75 had a terrible commencement speaker. We had Senator William Proxmire.
Oh,
He was awful.
right. Oh, my.
Good senator.
Yes, that's right.
Terrible speaker. Ugh.
Mm.
But we had a nice day. It was a beautiful evening. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Anybody else?
Can we ask anybody who's listening something?
Go ahead, Dean.
Michael O'Brien, are you still there?
I am still here.
What are you doing these days? You still
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Dean. Wait a minute. Do this offline. Do this through Facebook.
Charles, if I may,
Yes.
I like to mention a person that was very a big part of the Ramapo community, and recently passed away due to COVID, and his name was John Durkin. So,
yes.
Oh, John passed away?
Yes,
Yes.
he did, and
Oh.
it was such a sad thing for all of us. A person that was very involved in the sports area. If you remember the Virginia Slims, the tennis tournament, whatever it was, he was a big part of that. He was, he helped out with when Dr. Herman left and Ken Medaska came in, he helped out with the coaching. And he was a big part of it. He didn't live in Mahwah, but he moved to the next town, Stafford.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe that was it was certainly a shock to all of us.
Thank you, Nelson. And I have to say that he was very instrumental in the success of the first programs that we had. The student reflection at the college last year and the faculty. He worked with us very closely to generate and spread the word for those programs. He was very important to us, and particularly for the Alumni Association over the years that he worked with them very closely.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
He died from COVID?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
did.
boy.
Complications.
Yeah. It was a sad situation.
What a shame.
Yeah, and there's so many of our alum, like those of us from those early years, that have gone on, have passed on. It's incredible. At some point, maybe we could do a memorial wall or something like. Some of the bigger names like Mary Beth Thompson, and Charlie Hayner, who have passed. But there are so many more. So maybe at some point somebody could take the initiative, or I will. And we
at the museum can help facilitate that and at least provide a venue where you can all get together. That'd be great.
That would be good. Yes, that would be good. And tribute to.
Vinny, keep in touch, and we'll work on that.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can
Yeah.
friend me. We can communicate there too. There are a number of alumni I see here that are on Facebook with me, and that's a venue too to be able to communicate that. So.
A couple of faculty people on here, Gordon and Eddie. Any closing comments? No.
No, it was nice to see a bunch of familiar faces and to relive some of those early years. And when this COVID is done, come and visit campus. There are some things that are still just like you would remember them, like the College Park apartments and some things like we're building a new library. G building has been totally renovated. We have a new building for the Adler Center for Nursing Excellence. So don't be a stranger, but wait until COVID is over.
But I have to say that our experience, we happen to be extremely lucky that we went to a school that just opened up, and we were, so Vinny mentioned the intimacy. At 1,200 people that you pretty much knew everybody by name, you know, and everybody knew you, and anywhere, you know, and the parties, the hiking. I still to this day, I live in Mahwah, and I go, you know, I go hiking out the Ramapo reservation up to the lake and all of that stuff and whatnot. Ramapo allowed us to be ourselves, to be our own person, and not be directed where we were going to go. We became who we are.
Absolutely.
As a result of the education and the freedom that we got from, you know, from in the direction that we got from our professors and teachers and that kind of stuff. So and the environment at the school, it's just a fantastic thing. I'm very, very grateful that I went there, and I still live in Mahwah, and I go by every day. So it's a great deal.
Okay, folks, thank you for joining in. This has been, this is being recorded. We have the 2 programs from last year on a flash drive, and we're making arrangements to copy that. If you want to contact the museum, if you missed out on that and you want to get a copy of those 2 programs, we can arrange it to ship it to you with a small donation to the museum. So
thank you
for joining in, and
Thank you,
Thank you, Charlie.
Charlie, thank you for putting it
facilitating.
together.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
See you in
Speakers,
November.
good luck, everybody.
Seeing everybody.
See you in November. Thank you.
Good to
Bye.
see everybody.